Welcome, everyone, to the Next Gen Call Center series, where we interview experts and get their perspectives, best practices, and insights when it comes to implementing AI in your call center. Today, we're super privileged to have Ram Sundaram, the Director of AI Development at Genesys. Ram, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So before we kind of get into the more call center and AI specific questions, I always think it's interesting because I think you have such a unique background because you've been in the space of building conversational AI, NLP, NLU solutions, for perhaps the past 7 years, pre-LLM hype. So if you can share your experience kind of up until this point, I think would be kind of cool.
Sure. Thanks, Ted. Thanks for having me in this podcast. So as I said, we have been doing this for 7+ years, but my terrace with machine learning and AI goes back to 20 years. It's not even pre-AI hype days, but even before open source and all those things. So I started my career working on voice recognition, basically. Working on hidden Markov models, training, and then decoding. So I started from a startup, and then I worked in Microsoft core speech team for about 8 years in Redmond. Then moved back to India, and then joined Genesys. So where here basically we pivoted from ASR into NLP. And since then, it's been a fantastic journey working on everything related to NLP. Starting from sentiment to now generative AI.
Yeah, it must be kind of amazing for you to kind of witness that kind of evolution to where we're at today, and just the explosion of large language models and how much the transformer architecture has really solved a lot of these language and speech kind of opportunities that there was all these different individual models that we had for the longest time, right? How amazing is it for you to kind of witness and be a part of that?
Yeah, so when I started, it was all hidden Markov models. There was neural networks weren't that popular. They were definitely there, but nobody used it because of the compute cycles and stuff. So hidden Markov models and bomb-welch training were the main source of things that we use, with Viterbi search for decoding. So that's all in ASR space. I remember those days where a single iteration of training for ASR, we had only 30 hours of data to train. I'm sure now there is 300,000 hours of data. 30 to 40 hours of data is all we had to train, and that would take like 2.5 days. Things have come a long way since then. And then basically the usage of deep learning neural networks came into speech, and then it's now in NLP and everywhere. And even in NLP, I remember the pre-transformer days when it was all classic NLP, as people would call it, right? In some sense, we all earned for those days where you need to know about the language and everything, and feature engineering was very important. And it was a very, you need to know the data, you need to know the language, you need to know the morphology rules and all those things, when lemmatization and stuff really made sense. So those days were the ones that we started with, and we worked on sentiment, topic clustering, topic mining, intent mining, and all those kind of stuff. Then, in 2019 is when we started looking at, there is something called BERT. Let's look at that. And then, one thing I forgot is also the embedding space. So that was slightly before that Mikhailov paper, and we started using embeddings and stuff. And then in 2019, right before COVID, is when we started looking at, hey, there is this new thing called BERT. Let's try out. Oh, it's 110 MB models. It's so huge, we cannot run, and we just dropped the idea. I said, who will use this? That was the initial thing. Then we saw the accuracy gains that you get with these things. And then the engineering work starts after that. Once you see that, hey, this is really worth spending time on engineering side of things, because the gains that you get is extraordinary. Then Gen AI and all those things. It's been a fantastic journey. And to see the whole thing evolved from where we were 15 years ago to right today. And I'm sure 10 years later, we will say things were so behind. So
certainly. And we'll definitely dive into, actually two of the things you mentioned. I know before this podcast, we kind of had a conversation. Just you were stressing how important the engineering side is to like how do we actually productize and scale, some of these cutting edge technologies. And then the other thing you alluded to was, I certainly agree. Like in 10 years or even at the end of this decade, right? I think the world perhaps will look different, certainly than today, provided these technology leaps. But before we get into that, why don't you talk a little bit about your role today at Genesys? What does it entail? What are you working on? What are you excited about?
Sure. Genesys is a privately held firm, and we work in contact center space. Basically, we are a cloud-first company and help agents and supervisors and contact center do their work faster and efficient and stuff. So all our solutions are in cloud, and I am part of the AI team that actually helps build chatbots and Gen AI solutions. So my team is what I would call it as a full stack AI team. It's a good combination of people who have backend skills, machine learning skills, and stuff. So our goal is to build AI microservices, and we essentially take pride in building practical AI solutions. There's no point in building something that end users cannot use. So our goal is mostly on, as I said, I generally, when I get new people into my team, I say that, hey, you need to tone down your expectations. We are not Google or anything. Like, we don't spend 100% of the time in AI. It's hardly 20-30%. You need to know all the stuff, but remaining time you will spend a lot of time on engineering solutions. So a good combination of machine learning and software skills, and our goal is to just market AI and deliver it to the masses.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems extremely practical, especially because it seems like, call center, contact center, provided, new technology advances just have so much opportunity right now, but obviously, our previous conversation, it's really about thinking about things in like practical terms, right? It's like, what is actually going to drive business outcomes today versus a lot of the hype that seems to be perpetuating just the general ecosystem of AI right now to some extent.
Yeah, there is some amount of hype, definitely. I'm sure that is also needed. It can be both good and bad, because I see both the good and bad of that hype. The good being that people are willing to listen. Now, when we have some technology, because they have heard the hype and nobody wants to miss out on that, is definitely a FOMO thing. And the bad is there are some unrealistic expectations. They think that it's going to cure cancer. Probably it's not going to cure cancer. So yeah, that is the main thing that we need to watch out for. So yeah, hype is good.
Definitely. Cool. So switching gears a little bit before we jump into more of the AI specific topics, just generally speaking, for companies that are operating call centers, or leveraging call centers, perhaps their BPOs in 2024, can you share like some dominant trends that you're seeing? They could either be AI specific or, they could be things outside of AI. Just generally from your position, like what do you kind of see, shifting in 2024?
Yeah, one thing is, with all this advent of AI and Gen AI, especially things that were pretty hard before to convince people or to do is now becoming slightly practical. Things like, can we help agents with after call work, or help them with the wrap up code predictions and stuff? We had good amount of technology back then, but as I said, people were really not willing to take it, saying that, oh yeah, this might not work, and oh, my agents are really good, they can take care of it in like a minute or so, or something like that. But now with this AI and Gen AI, and people hearing the hype, and also the technology also taking that leap there, we basically are able to do things that we were wanting to do 2-3 years ago, like summarization, wrap up call prediction, and those things. So this is on the side of things like we basically wanted to do, but now are able to do it. Second one is also to be able to give, I think this is another thing that we are seeing, is to be able to give better insights and stuff to supervisors. So if I'm a supervisor monitoring 50 agents or 100 agents, yes, I have a dashboard and stuff. But a dashboard is pretty static. It can only give you so much unless you start filtering and like kind of clicking the mouse around. Whereas now with Gen AI, they can probably query and you get the answer. You can say, hey, which agent is having a skill gap in blah finance queue or something like that. then you can seamlessly things work in the background. Your query is being understood, converted to a SQL query or whatever it is, and then a dashboard kind of shows up for you dynamically based on your natural language query. This is something that we are actually seeing in terms of people wanting this kind of technology, and that is definitely possible today. And third one, which I want to see, which is a very practical solution, I think, from a end user's perspective, like when I am calling into a call center for whatever might be. Yes, the emphasis seems to be mostly on, oh, we have AI chatbots and stuff can solve the problem. But sometimes it's also helpful where we can use AI to connect me to the best agent possible. Um, I'm sure everybody is working on it with the predictive routing and all those kind of stuff. But I would probably want to see that little bit get into more mainstream where it is advertised well and people say that, hey, we use AI to route to a better human, a better agent that can solve your problem. So that is something that I want to see practically. I hope we get there soon.
And I remember in our pre-interview, you mentioned like you actually had like a real experience with like the airline. You were trying to like coordinate airline tickets or something for your children, and like you kind of you were the actual user and experiencing perhaps maybe if they did that routing better.
Yes, actually, that was actually a good story because I was booking tickets with an airline, Virgin Atlantic to be specific. I don't know. So, and the bot and stuff was fantastic. Like it was really good. But my problem was slightly complicated. In fact, it was so good that I thought, okay, hey, I don't know who built this chatbot and all those things. And it turns out that Genesys is actually the customer who actually builds the bot. So it was like a win-win for me. And then I was just telling my manager then that, hey, I interacted with the chatbot experience was super cool. And then he was like, hey, that's powered by Genesys. So I was like, wow, that is nice. But on the flip side of it, since my problem was slightly more complicated because I had my children travel to the US, but they were traveling alone, but they were booked on different airlines and stuff. And one airline was letting them travel by themselves. The second airline wasn't. So there was issues with boarding pass and all those things. These things definitely the bot slightly failed on those because it is a complicated problem. And that's where you need a human in the loop for sure. And where we are today is like all this information was nicely, seamlessly presented to the agent because then they didn't have to ask me the same questions again. It's not like, oh, what's your problem, blah, blah, blah. All those things were nicely summarized, the PNR number, the date of travel, the airlines that they took, everything was done. And then when the agent came into the loop, it was nicely that he started off from exactly where the bot left. So that was very, very nice. And I hope in the near future, even that problem will also be kind of solved. But I don't think we will get there soon because there is always a human that is needed to solve some problems, to empathize and give us the morale that this problem is actually solved. How much ever we try to automate it, I think a human in the loop is always required.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think perhaps we're a little bit far ways before we get to the point where everything's automated. I know there's some people that are like making those claims, but I think you mentioned previously too, it's like very much human augmentation. There are problems such as the point you're making about, look, there's like traditional analytics dashboards, but as a function of like layering on large language models, we're able to get perhaps more prescriptive insights, or it's more easier to query and identify where there are people that might be there could be a performance boost necessary, right? And
Yeah,
those
and also
things.
you don't, sorry, and also you don't want a machine always, right? Sometimes you need the human in the loop. If you are stuck with your car battery down, then I want to talk to actually a human to assure me that help is on the way. Correct? How much ever you automate it, it's a probably a very very simple problem that can be automated, but I still want to know that, hey, I talked to a human and it's being taken care of for them to be with me in the call or whatever might be depending on the situation. So yes, you want to help the agents and supervisors as much as possible. And for certain tasks, yes, if it's a repeated thing, you are going to get asked like 20,000 times a day. Yes, AI and machine learning can definitely help. But for certain tasks, how much ever you want to automate it, a human in the loop is always better.
Absolutely. So kind of on the flip side, what are some challenges perhaps that you're seeing, in 2024, right? It could be just, technology related. It could be marketing. It could be, I keep hearing things about, you know, uh, CCaaS, and then there's still people that are running things on-prem, and perhaps there's like hybridized solutions, even around that area still.
Um, One of the things is, as I said, because of the hype, there is unrealistic expectation that people expect it to be, once they are in for whatever reason, once they want to try out and say, hey, this one works and stuff, then the expectation is really high. So it's very kind of becoming, I think there is also a lack of knowledge on either sides. They think that it's going to solve every problem, or every call will be, for example, if I take summarization as an example, they assume that every call will be summarized to 100%. But this is still an evolving technology. Still, how much ever advances that we have made, this is still an evolving technology, that there is going to be mistakes that are going to be made. That's where you need the agent in the loop. How much ever we do the after call work, there's still somebody who needs to review. So that is one of the challenges that we see in terms of people expecting, like, hey, you said this is going to work, and you see that these 3 calls, you didn't get it right. Maybe it got the dollar figure wrong. Yes, it is a big problem. I certainly agree to that. But if you look at a whole, out of 100,000 calls, we got 3 calls incorrect, which is a good thing that I would say. But still, people are expecting us to saying that, hey, this is wrong, so I'm not going to buy you a solution. That is something that we have to get over it. Obviously, both on the technology side and on the expectation side, that needs to match. And second one is also, people are, I think it's no longer 2023. In 2024, people are looking at cost efficiency, and they want the return on investment. The prototyping days are gone. So people just want to say, hey, this is there. It's been 1.5 years since ChatGPT came, and you said this is going to work. You need to make it work at a cost efficient way. That's another challenge that we see, because every day you see people are kind of building larger and larger language models, which are kind of good for research and pushing the boundaries of the technology, but actually not that great for actual use cases that we want AI to work on. So cost is another big thing that we are actually seeing. People want the return on investment as soon as possible.
So that's actually a great segue. So the next question, we're going to start to talk about AI more specifically. What trends are you seeing right now? As LLMs and the architecture and the ecosystem evolve, and perhaps maybe one thing we could start with, to your point, is small language models. And any other areas you're seeing, agents seem to be, gaining kind of a resurgence lately. So what kind of trends are you seeing specifically around the technology?
Yeah, we are seeing 2 things mainly. Is one is on the smaller language models. Almost every big foundation model company nowadays is also releasing a smaller model variant of their model. Think about Mistral or Microsoft or Google, Facebook. Everybody seems to have like the 405 billion parameter Llama 3, and there is also a 8 billion parameter Llama 3. So I think the smaller LLM is actually catching up very nicely. And in fact, my definition of smaller LLM is even lesser than that. I look at things that are like 2 billion and less, that I can fit into a consumer GPU as a smaller LLM. Yes, Llama 3 will fit in, but it's by consumer GPU means I'm talking about standard G5 large kind of thing. So yeah, so that is where the thing is going towards. And there are quite a few things in terms of Phi and Gemma, which are kind of even smaller than Llama and can get the task done. So if you talk about wrap-up code prediction or summarization and stuff, you don't have to summarize in 10 different formats, right? A larger language model can do it. It can summarize like Shakespeare, or it can write a poem of the summary, or whatever it can do. But we don't want to do that in a enterprise solution. We just want to do it in a couple of formats and stuff. So that's where all these nice smaller language models come in. And I think that's, people are also realizing that, hey, I can use these models that are fit for purpose, which I can then train, fine tune based on my data, and then get it out. And this also provides the cost efficiency that I talked about previously in terms of this you get the control and it's also cost efficient. So it's a win-win situation. The second one that we are seeing is on the chatbot side with virtual agents. It's kind of similar to what our previous chatbot is, but with a little bit more complicated tasks and stuff. So that's another trend that we are actually seeing in terms of the cost and contact center solutions is people also want all these virtual agents and stuff, so that, as I said, the simple stuff is taken care of by the bot, and then it comes to an agent. Real agent it gets transferred to a real agent only when it gets complicated or when a human is specifically asked for. So these are the two main trends that we are actually seeing in this.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, specifically, as I've been talking to a lot of these customer-facing enterprise companies, right? And even this was back like 6 months ago, right? A lot of them were remarking on how expensive these models are. So I think it's great, to your point, that we're getting to a point where we're leveraging more and more small language models that, perhaps aren't good at doing 10 different things, but they're good at perhaps doing transcription really, really well, right? And it's a very cost-effective model, and it could be, I'm imagining, fine-tuned specifically for this customer, and it works great, right?
Yeah, and the main thing, as I said, is also you have the data, right? For anybody, think about like a finance company or even Genesys and stuff. We have the data, and then we have very customer specific data that we want to use it to tackle very specific customer problems, and that data is not going to llama or something is not going to be trained on that particular data. So we have the data which we can use it to make the model better. And as you said, we don't want to do 10 different things. We want to do like 2 things really good. So that's actually a very good thing, and gives you that fine-grained control. And also, we also see that many of the large enterprise customers are wary of, hey, how is my data being used? So this gives them the peace of mind, saying that, okay, my data is being used to develop my model alone. It's not being shared with anybody else. And it's pretty safe that I can share this data with the company that is going to help me out. Yeah, that data
Absolutely.
privacy is also a very big thing that is solved by all these smaller language models.
So going to the second point you mentioned, kind of about this like almost like resurgence or demand for chatbots, right? What is that a function of? Is it a function of, perhaps the technology stacks are just more efficient? Because I remember back like, even 5 years ago, right? How expensive and time consuming and how much human capital you needed for an effective chatbot experience. Like you primarily at that point, like 5, 6 years ago, right? Only enterprises, financial institutions, large enterprise healthcare companies were really able to really get the ROI on these type of solutions, right? So like, what is that like function now that is making these things perhaps easier to deploy and just more effective? I imagine there's some element of LLMs in there, but I'm sure that's not everything.
Yeah, definitely LLM is one piece of the puzzle because previously, if you think about a chatbot, if you want to classify between 30 intents to route it to different queues or something, then for all those 30, you need to generate utterances so that you can train an intent classifier and all those things. And that needs a lot of human in the loop, and you need more data and stuff like that. But now with LLMs coming in, there are 2 approaches that people are taking. Either I just describe each intent, and then that's it. And then the algorithms and the models are so powerful that they can just put you in the right intent for classification. And or the second one, if you still want to keep the traditional chatbot where you still want to use a classic intent recognition algorithm and stuff, then you can basically saying that describe the intent, and then it will generate the utterances for you that you can further train your normal classifier on. So this has really pushed the needle in terms of the entry barrier for you to create a chatbot on day one. Like you can define intents in the morning, and by evening you should have a chatbot up and running. That is a very big thing, and with very minimal human in the loop. whereas previously it used to take days, if not weeks, for you to get something out. So that is a very main thing. And same thing with entity extraction and stuff. These models have become so powerful that I don't have to train again entity extractor for a particular customer. They can understand things from names, geo to company names to license plates to, I don't know, VIN number and all those things. So you can seamlessly extract and then look up and all those things. So your chatbot building process has actually the time to market, if you want to get a chatbot out, has actually reduced a lot. I think that's basically the reason for all these new resurgence. Maybe that could be one more thing, people preferring digital channel more and more to traditional call. So those still call voice dominates most of the interactions, but I think there is a good uptake on digital interactions also. So maybe that's also one of the drivers that people just want to chat and get things done.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's ultimately it's like, where does the customer experience lie? It's specifically with the customer, right? What channels they want to, utilize, and hopefully, these companies can deliver experiences that provide, end customers with value. So it's
Yeah,
great that, yeah,
digital is
yeah.
that way very good because I think the interaction is there for even for you to look at, right? So I was talking about the airline thing. So 2 days later that I had to talk, and immediately it was possible just for the agent to just show the whole chat because the interaction is still there. It's not yet gone. And so you can quickly recap and get all the things that you said 2 days ago and look it up. So that way digital is very powerful, and you can do it on various mediums over WhatsApp or browser, anything.
Absolutely. So I guess switching gears a little bit, and now kind of more specifically talking about, I guess features and use cases that you feel most excited about, or you've seen customers seen a lot of success with. Can you like share any like stories, as of late? Perhaps like there's a feature that your team or a couple of features you guys have deployed, and you actually getting to see the customer, success and outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. One is definitely, as I said, the after call work, be it summarization, wrap up code prediction and stuff. And that's been one of our success stories in terms of having to be able to deploy it at scale. And we are able to process huge amounts of data and deliver the value. And that's been a very good success story. Like we have been doing it for various verticals now, be it banking, they have one kind of requirement. And a couple of interesting things is also like there's a unique thing that we were doing for a furniture delivery company. So it's like all the calls and stuff that we summarize when we actually look at it was very kind of, you don't think about furniture company will have all these kind of things. And obviously the model is doing good and we are able to summarize and stuff, because when we think about verticals, people only talk about banking, insurance, or healthcare and stuff like that. But there are lots of use cases that we see for all these small mom and pop companies kind of. So that are actually getting benefit for it. It's not like you are going to summarize for them. It's not a high traffic thing because they probably get only 1,000 calls a day. But it still adds a lot of value because they are really starved for agents and stuff. So it actually helps those kind of agents to get this done. And then the second one that I see that we are proceeding towards is on this supervisor insights and stuff that not many people are thinking about. And that's one of the use case where we are really working towards in terms of, can we add additional value to the agents and supervisors? Can I give you what is the reason for the call? How is there any things that were promised, or what is the resolution and all those things? So that is really going to help the agents. And here also we see that people are using it in different ways and stuff. And that's another win that we are looking at in terms of where we have deployed and what's out there right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine there's probably, specifically to your point of like how different companies are using it differently, I imagine there's probably also a huge opportunity with just like training new agents, right? Because they're in this nesting period and they're kind of, still training, but they're logging calls and just having that situational awareness to analyze like, okay, like these new agents, are doing well. These agents maybe need some more support, so you could just like expedite that cycle of like agent efficiency during that training ramp up period. I imagine
In
it's
fact,
probably an opportunity.
yeah, in fact, we saw it actually goes actually both ways. We had a pilot with one of our customers, and they came back with a good kind of when we did the pilot, and then they did a big study. They initially piloted it only for 30 agents, then they scaled it to 150 or something like that. Then they presented us a report, and they were very happy with the overall AHT and stuff has reduced by over a minute or something like that. One thing that at least to me it was surprising is or very thing was like different agents use it in different ways. They said that in that report we saw that the people who are new, as you said, used it extensively, and basically they used it as a guiding post, saying that okay, here the call is summarized and there is a wrap up prediction and stuff, and then they were literally hoping that this is right, and then they were spending a little bit more time, but not as much as if they had to do for typing and stuff. Whereas the experienced agents, they knew what they were typing already, right? So they were just quickly glancing it and probably correcting some typos or just punctuations and stuff and just submitting it faster. So it actually helped both ways. For the experienced ones, it basically said that, hey, I can take a quick glance. If once I get used to it for a couple of days, I know what I need to write. And this model or whatever, the output is very similar to it. I'm just going to correct a few things and I'm done. Whereas for the newer agents, it was more like, okay, I'm going to take a closer look, but it's still much faster than if I had to type the whole thing or because I tend to miss out stuff, whereas the model is capturing everything. And then I just need to give a good read through and then submit. So it was actually helping both ways in terms of reducing the after call work duration.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. It's like amazing innovation breakthroughs because I think the significant part is like not only are we able to augment like existing like problems humans have, right? But we're also able to augment, problems that previously were very difficult to solve with conventional technologies, right? So now we're able to, for example, the analytics component you're talking about now, perhaps with conventional technologies, like maybe it was possible, but it would be very difficult to actually implement or scale or do, from a cost perspective. But now these problems, are getting to the point where they can be solved, right? So I think
yeah,
that's a significant thing.
yeah, even on the wrap-up code, also we see that generally there will be like 50 wrap-up codes, and everybody just will just click the basic one and just done, right? Because they really don't care. Whatever they are basically told that you cannot close the call without getting the wrap-up code, so they just choose the default or whatever they choose the last time or something. Whereas now with us predicting the wrap-up codes and suggesting, saying that we don't say this is the wrap-up code, we just say these things are the wrap-up codes. Do you want to take a look? And now we are also seeing people are actually saying that, okay, hey, okay, I don't have to skim through 50, but here there are 3. And we see a change in pattern where people are actually selecting the correct one. Instead of just selecting the default and ensuring that the call is done, they're actually saying, okay, this 3, and then this one seems to be the most reasonable one. So now we see a variety of wrap-up codes that is helping the supervisors or whoever is going to look at this data further to see exactly what the wrap-up code was. So that's also a change in behavior that we have introduced with the agents with this new technology and stuff. And same thing for the insights, right? Previously, you could probably do it, but it's going to be a very static technology. Now, the technology has said that it's going to be dynamic and very personalized to the particular supervisor. If you query in a slightly different way, or you might be interested in a very different set of things that you want to query about. And I am very interested in whatever my queue is different because the people that I am supervising are pretty junior or something like that. I just want to know what is the skill gap, where are they spending more of whole time and all those things. And I can also with a single natural language query ask like, okay, tell me why was there a hold at that point? So then the system can literally dig through now with the conversation and say that, oh, the whole time was because at this point they were asking for something that the agent couldn't find. So you can get into that level, and it's dynamic. So it's no longer the same insights or dashboard for you and me as supervisors. It's very personalized.
And that's absolutely what you want to see, right? It's like, historically there was just all this high cognitive load, and now you're using AI and automation to kind of reduce some of that. And as a function, the behavior is shifting, and
Yes.
the outcomes are better, right? They're giving higher fidelity data as a function of just like, look, we don't have to have the same amount of cognitive load, and we can now focus our attention onto kind of higher value things, for, whether that's directly the agent is getting some higher value so they feel better, and also specifically for the end customer who's experiencing that experience as well. So I think that's kind of amazing to see kind of those shifts occur.
Yeah. Also, as I said, with summarization and stuff, the whole content is captured, right? Otherwise, if you are on a 30-minute call with somebody, even if you and I talking, if I have to remember what was your first question, I probably wouldn't know now. Whereas, so we cannot expect the agent to summarize it exactly. And also we can customize to their requirements, saying that, hey, give me a bullet point or give me a paragraph or whatever might be. So it captures the whole content of the call, and they can actually listen to the customer and empathize instead of saying that I should not forget this, I should not forget this, instead of them taking notes and stuff.
Absolutely. So kind of changing gears again a little bit, for call center operators, for BPOs that run call centers, and they're all looking at these technologies. You and I had a conversation previously, just kind of talking about the considerations, or more specifically, the existing limitations of LLM. So, and we kind of called out, 3 or 4 of them. Latency, is something to be aware of, cost, quality of output. Can you speak to those as far as like, what's your current impression of those as far as like how significant of a consideration each of those things are, as companies begin to really think about, okay, well, like it's great technology, but perhaps the latency is too high in this area. So maybe we should not really use this for this use case.
Yeah. So there are 2 or 3 things that we
Mm.
always worry about. One is hallucination. So that's something that makes us worry, saying that, yes, you do all the things that you are able to do, but still, if the call volumes are so high, if I'm going to transcribe or do anything with like 1 million conversations a day, then there is bound to be some hallucination. We don't know what kind of conversations they are having. We cannot look at the data, but we just only get the complaints of it. So hallucination is something that we are worrying about always. Of course, with fine tuning and stuff, that is reduced to a large extent. As I said, it's not going to do 20 things, but it's going to do only 2 things correctly. So which means you reduce the hallucination to a large extent, but it's still sometimes it is there, depending on how you call it as a hallucination. If somebody says, I will call you back in 24 hours, and if the system says, the agent said they will call back in 2 hours, it is incorrect. Is it hallucination? There is always this constant debate. Second one, which we are seeing with all these virtual agents, which we worry about, is prompt injection attacks. That is other thing, right? How much ever good these models are, even if you forget the fact that there are, it's not like people wanting to wantedly do these things, but you can basically destabilize the system to a large extent. Because at the end of the day, these are just instruction following models, basically. So you can say, hey, can you please help me with my bank account, and say something else, which means the first part is correct, but the second part is something that they are trying to do malicious. So that is something that we are looking at, and almost every model out there does these things. It is prone to prompt injection attacks. So that is other one. The third one is generally, as I said, the latency versus cost debate. So yes, I can use a really powerful model which will give me more accurate results, but it's going to be slow, which is going to cost me more. And so that's the balancing act that we have to do in terms of managing the latency with cost. So yeah, these are the three major considerations. I would not say it's a limitation on current LLMs because they are what they are. It's up to us to navigate these problems with better solutions at an engineering level.
Absolutely. And perhaps maybe you could share some of your, experience on the engineering side, right? It's like, building, like we saw a lot of like really amazing proof of concepts, like a year ago with agents and all these things, but it's just like when you actually try to take them into production, oftentimes they just don't work, as initially advertised in a lot of these POCs, that were hyped up. So like, can you kind of share your experience around that? What's that kind of process look like? I'm sure things are evolving all the time as like new frameworks and new approaches kind of emerge.
Yeah, definitely. Engineering is where we spend a lot of time. Actually, I keep telling them saying that, hey, AI is only 30%, 70% is engineering. Because yeah, there is going to be new model out there every week, if not every day nowadays. So we have to kind of choose a model carefully because we are going to spend time on fine tuning and all those things. So I don't want to find something like, hey, this model that we took is not good anymore because something that is far superior has come. So that's the first trade-off that we need to do in terms of not worry about what's getting released in Hugging Face every day. Okay, obviously we keep track, but we don't worry about it. We keep track, we evaluate and stuff, but we don't say that, okay, the model that I have is really bad. Obviously, we will move to a newer model and stuff at some point. So that's on the AI side. And also one other underappreciated aspect of engineering, if I can call it, is also the data part. Collecting and curating data is a very big thing because the models that we train are basically that is directly proportional to the data that you provide. Good input, good output, garbage in, garbage out, basically. So we take a lot of time in preparing the data and curating it and ensuring that the outputs match to our expectations. So for example, we all know that one of the significant components of latency in an LLM is the number of outputs predicted, right? Number of outputs tokens generated. So for summarization, do we want to say if I have I don't know, 1,000-word input document, should I produce a 70-word summary or a 120-word summary? Obviously, the 120-word summary is going to cost me more time. So that is a choice that I need to take upfront. I cannot train a model and then figure out that, oh, I don't want a 120-word summary because it is slower. So that's a trade-off that you need to, and these decisions are just not up to you, right? You also need to talk to your engineering team, your product manager and stuff. It's up to everybody. You need to share some outputs and say, hey, do you want this output or do you want this output? Then they'll make a choice saying that, yeah, the 70-word summary is fine. You can go with that. Okay, that's good. Or somebody will say, no, the 120-word summary is good. And then you need to educate them to say that, hey, then this is going to cost you in terms of some latency, memory, and all those things. So that's a trade-off that you do. All these things are even before you start getting into the coding and stuff. And then, so once all these things are done, then it's about, as I said, we don't want to use even a A100 or something like that. Forget even the H100 stuff. We just want it to be on consumer GPUs that's out there, and whatever model can fit in there. And which means that our memory and stuff is limited. But our use cases are also more, because people don't want to just summarize in English, but they want to summarize in another 10 different languages. So how are you going to accommodate these things in a single GPU, and that scales? So that's another thing basically that we look at. Can we load it faster, load these models faster, and can I load them dynamically when I want? There is no point in me loading a Spanish model and English model every time. Can I load it faster so that only when I need it, I load the model and stuff? So that's the trade-off again that we have to take. So yeah, these are the main things that we actually worry about. And also in terms of how now there is also an engineering aspect where how fast we scale, right? Because now when I'm hit with more requests, because we're not just going to do 100 summaries a day. We are going to do 100,000 summaries or 1,000,000 summaries a day. So I need to be able to scale faster. At the same time, I don't want to just have 100 GPUs waiting for the request to come. So how fast we can scale and process is something that it's an engineering challenge. It's no longer AA or a Gen AI problem. I have a GPU. I need to know how fast can I scale it, can I cache it, and all those kind of things is what we look at. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the other side of the equation that we should talk about too is, you know, provided engineering is being facilitated effectively, and then these great solutions come to market on kind of the customer side, when they start to like strategically think about, you know, how should we be, you know, positioning ourselves for these AI tailwinds, right? Like, what would you suggest as far as like what are like table stakes? You know, as far as like, look, like these solutions are at a point today where it's like within the next, you know, 1, 2, 3 years, this is just going to be prevalent across the entire call center space, right? Like what would be your suggestion, you know, as these companies begin to really strategically think about like, how should we be leveraging AI today? Like, what are the things that are going to be table stakes that we need to start implementing?
Yeah. So one is, as I said, most of the times people miss the fact that it is it's like a combination of engineering and AI problem, right? So, and everybody needs to be on board. And somebody needs to look at the technology side, somebody has to look at the engineering side of things. And when these two kind of work together, that's when you get a very good um, solution and stuff. And one of the tailwinds that we see is, as I said, people are getting increasingly cost conscious, and they want efficiency on that basically. And also, as I said, there is also this expectation that things should work, and we need to be ready for that. Today, whatever we talk about virtual agents or supervisor insights and stuff, this is probably going to be table stakes 2, 3 years later, or maybe something else that I don't know today. Maybe it will be the table stakes 2, 3 years ago. Sorry, later. So that's something that we need to be ready for, and that comes with just constantly innovating. You don't have to innovate in like big chunks. Just a small increment over a quarter can actually get you there. Can you solve the caching problem today? Or can you basically ensure that your model is fine-tuned? Or can you reduce the hallucination? All those kind of things will actually help you get there when these things become table stakes. So by the time that technology would have come, and you also would have engineeringly solved some of these basic issues that are a problem today. And then that's when you basically go with it in 2, 3 years time when these things become table stakes.
Absolutely. That's, I think that's great advice, you know, especially for, you know, everyone that's watching this podcast. Last question. So your personal opinion, where do you see all this going? Right. I mean, you know, I know when we had our pre-interview, we kind of talked about the vision of where we kind of speculate some of this really great technology is going. So just, you know, your personal opinion, it doesn't have to be, you know, specific to what you're working on now. But I know you have a passion for this.
To be honest, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you where I want this to go. I want this to be mainstream, where I people don't care anymore on how this actually works. So today, if you think about Google Maps or anything, not many people know how maps actually work. How did they collect data? How did they actually map the whole world, right, at this point? That's my favorite solution, favorite example, because I never thought Google Maps will never work in India. Streets are not named and all those things, but they did it somehow. Okay. And not only Google, but now several other companies have done it. But nobody knows exactly how they did it. It just works, right? When I just open my phone and say, I want to go from some place in Hyderabad, from place A to place B, things just work. I wanted to go there in terms of it should just work. Currently, there's a lot of things saying that, as I said, we talked about a lot of stuff. I need a smaller language model. I need data. I need to fine tune, and I need to scale, and all those kind of things. I hope these things will slowly kind of normalize and things just work no matter what. I'm sure there are already things that are happening in terms of making these technology work for various use cases. And one other thing I'm passionate about is to see this probably used more in healthcare, either to reduce the cost of the healthcare itself and also to be able to avoid unnecessary deaths that are actually occurring today. Mainly around the second part, and even the cost is right. Cost is pretty high, and we all know that's a big problem, especially in the US. So yeah, we want to definitely. I personally wanted to see kind of being very much there in terms of in the healthcare space. Basically, that's what I would wanted to see there, saying that AI is very prevalent in healthcare in terms of detecting whatever may be cancers or whatever, and also in the preventive medication, right? Is there something that we can do that will prevent and stuff? The third one is also for me, it's on food and how can we grow crops efficiently. I don't know. I'm not well versed in that, but that's something that I'm sure people are looking at, because yes, soil itself is scarce, right? Basically, having a nutrient-rich soil. I don't know. Maybe there are some technology that is coming up there. So this is where I see things I want to go. And if you talk about in terms of contact center space, I think I mentioned before, is like keep the end consumer in mind, and probably we should think about that. Currently, we are looking in terms of the agent and supervisors, which is good, but there is also the end consumer who is making the call and talking to the agent, right? I'm sure there are certain things that might come up there. And that is something that we want to see in the contact center space, because without the end consumer, there is no agent or supervisor. So that's definitely what
100%.
I want to see.
Well, thank you so much, Ram. Really appreciate you sharing all of your insights and perspectives. Would love to have you back in the future. Can't wait to see what new features you ship at the company. So thank you so much, and we will talk soon.
Sure. Thanks, Chad. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.